Good evening, everyone. My name is Addie Simmons, and I'm the Executive Director of Washington Family Engagement. It is our pleasure to welcome you all of you tonight as we gather to hear from candidates for the elected position of State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Chris Reichel, Ms. Maya Espinosa. On behalf of Washington Family Engagement and our parent and youth leaders present tonight, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy our forum.
All right. Welcome, Superintendent Chris Reichel and Maya Espinosa, and welcome, audience. We will be recording this forum so that we can share this with those who could not attend tonight. My name is Lizzie Sebring, and I am a parent leader and your moderator for tonight. Thank you for attending our virtual forum hosted by Washington Family Engagement and the Washington Leadership Network and sponsored by Washington State Association of Head Start and ECAP. The Washington Leadership Network is a grassroots group of parent and youth graduates from the Parent Leadership Training Institute, Children's Leadership Training Institute, ParentNet, and other programs who work to create awareness of social and community issues to inform decision makers and public policy development. Tonight's format will start with questions asked by some of our children leaders. Following those, there will be questions asked by our parent leaders. These pre-selected questions were submitted online by students and parents prior to this forum. After our children and parent leader questions, we will ask questions from the audience. Audience, please put your questions into the chat box and we will do our best to ask as many as time allows. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. There will be a visible timer on the screen by our timekeeper, and when your time is up, I ask that you quickly wrap up your remarks. I will alternate who responds first to each question. Lastly, I want to mention that the closed captioning is not done by a live person, but rather through a computer program. So any names or when questions are being asked in Spanish may not look correct in the caption. Candidates, I ask you to please answer clearly as we do have someone translating live for our Spanish-speaking audience. Let's go ahead and begin. Superintendent Reichel and Ms. Espinosa, you will each have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, starting with you, Superintendent Reichel.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. It's October. This has been a pretty remarkable last 6 or 7 months, and I think a tremendous challenge for our state. I'm the superintendent of public schools in the state of Washington, and I want to thank you for having us here tonight. Over the last 4 years since I've been in this role, we've done some pretty transformative things in Washington state. With a lot of work left to do. We certainly knew we were going to come in to refinance our schools. We had really tremendous inequities in our schools and a real lack of funding for basic education. And our state's courts have really mandated that we think differently about that. What's lesser known is that we've redone discipline rules in the state because it's so disproportionate by race and for students with disabilities. We've de-linked high stakes testing from graduation so that we could really focus on courses and classes and pathways for kids. And our graduation rates have hit a record high even as students are taking more rigorous courses. So it's gotten more rigorous and we're still seeing success. All of this has rested on a real focus, of course, for closing gaps. Our students of color, students in poverty, English language access barriers, and students with disabilities do not graduate at the same rate as the overall state average. So we've been growing that, and it's growing faster amongst those student groups than the overall. So we are slowly closing those gaps with a lot more work to do. I'm very grateful to have the role. The next 4 years is certainly going to require the leadership and experience and background that I have. I'm a parent of 2 in school right now. I'm a former public school teacher and worked in higher education for 14 years, a school board member. I've had a lot of roles to see this. We're going to have a real budget crisis as we come out of COVID here, so it's going to take a combination of skills working with our districts to get them to reopen safely and sustainably, but it's also going to require some real budget skills to help the legislature and the governor move us forward without seeing impacts to our districts. I appreciate your time tonight and hope you're all doing well.
Thank you. And now, Ms. Espinosa, your turn for your 2-minute introduction.
Thank you, Lizzie, and thank you so much for hosting this event. My name is Maya Espinosa. Soy Maya Espinosa. Encantada para estar con ustedes. Thank you so much for organizing this important meeting. It's my pleasure to be able to meet some of you virtually tonight. I'm a mom, first and foremost, with 2 kids in public school who are suffering through the online school, as I'm sure so many of you students and parents are experiencing as well during this unfortunate pandemic. I am running for this position because I feel that it is high time that we reimagine an education system that works for all of our students, not just those that can afford public or private school, or can afford to live in a neighborhood where the public schools are better than those of us that don't really have a choice where we get to live. So this is the platform of my campaign, and it hinges on parent choice. I believe that every student deserves what's best for them, and that their parents know what that is, and that we should empower parents to be able to make these choices for the kids. And I think when we do that, more options promote better equity. I have attended a dozen different public schools nationwide, lived all over the country, but proud to call Washington my home since middle school, and now to raise a family here. So I think that our public schools are in a prime position to be able to do something fantastic given the increase in student spending. We've seen it for 3 or 4 years now, and we really haven't seen a change in our schools yet. I mentioned the pandemic, and I just think that right now, with schools being closed, with everything kind of up in the air, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something different with our public school system. And I hope to lead that change with parents that have been demanding this change for so long. So I've been a school teacher at a small Catholic school. I've been a business owner, a nonprofit leader for civics in the Latino community, the Center for Latino Leadership. And I think that I have what it takes to be able to do this job. I've worked in Olympia to build some coalitions, and it's time that we do something different. So ask for your support, and excited to answer questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to start with our first children leader. William, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, my name is William Hernandez. I'm 13 years old, and I go to Eisenhower Middle School. And my question is, how will you be able to support the average student? Because I am seeing a lot of support being given to students who receive special education services, English language interventions, and those who are in highly capable programs. And I want to know what is being done for students like myself who are not part of any of these programs. To get the support, we need to be successful in our learning.
All right, Superintendent McDowell, I'll have you answer the question first.
Okay, great. Thank you for that awesome question. I think our school system is really compelled to support all of our students. This is a really rough time right now, of course, as the whole country shut down schools and are slowly reopening. Our guidance to the school districts is very clear that they've really got to make one-to-one contact with all students. And our buildings are open if there's a need for a student to really have a connection in a small group or a one-to-one setting that can't be accommodated effectively in remote learning. The challenge, of course, is not everyone can do the remote learning right now. So 300,000 devices have been deployed, 60,000 connections for families, and we've got another 60,000 or so that we think we have budget for. So we're really pushing hard for this. We've challenged districts to have a academic and a social emotional screener for all of our students to really know where they are. We don't want anyone left behind in this, but we really have to assess where kids are. And I appreciate the way you framed that question, because I was a former school teacher, offered AP classes and offered other things. And I said, no, I want my gen ed classrooms. I want to just work with students who are working hard and who are here and see themselves as hard workers, but not necessarily in some special program. And so that's kind of where my passion is, and that's what I did when I was a teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Espinoza. Ms. Espinoza, I don't hear you right now.
Make sure you've selected English as your language at the bottom of the screen. No. Do you see a little round circle at the bottom where it says interpretation? Select English.
And
No.
then select mute original audio.
Nope, still can't hear you. Nope. It's weird because it was working.
Yeah, April, does she need to mute original audio?
Did you mute original audio, Maya? And you said English?
Tell her to unmute.
Try unmute. Nope, still can't hear you.
Oh, no.
I don't know. Yeah, she's gonna leave and come back.
Yeah.
Gotta love technology.
Thank you for bearing with us.
No problem, no problem.
This is our first foray into hosting a virtual format.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and mute now too, so you can focus on her audio when she comes back in.
All right. Thank you, audience. Appreciate you waiting patiently while we work through our technical issues.
I think we've all been there.
I just let her in again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes.
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 Okay, I didn't press any interpretation buttons yet.
I can't hear her.
Press. Try English.
English.
Okay, now I can hear.
I can hear you, but you're very quiet.
Yep. Just talk louder.
I can talk louder.
There you go. We got it.
We good?
We're good.
Okay, I will start going quickly until someone stops me. William, I was saying thank you so much for your question. I don't see where he went, but I really appreciate William asking this question and for being here tonight, engaging in this important subject. So thank you first and foremost, William, for that very courageous question. Oh, I see you now. I think my daughter might describe herself kind of like you, not in the AP classes, not, needing special help, not in a special needs class or anything like that, but considers herself average and kind of feels left out maybe. So I think this question's very important. And I think you might be surprised to know that a lot of students probably feel the same way that you do. One of the whole pieces of this reimagine education is this choice that I talked about, not only as far as where you go to school, but what classes you take. I would love to give you more options to be able to study what you want to learn. And I hope that will, help your school experience be that much better. I think I saw the timer run out, so I'm going to stop it there.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
All right. Our next question comes from River. River, go ahead and ask your question.
My name is River. I'm a parent for a child leader. And your question is, what is your plan?
What's your plan?
For school districts?
For 6 and 6.
To hire more diverse?
To hire
more diverse? Teachers and staff.
And teachers and staff. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, River. Ms. Espinoza, your turn first.
Thank you, River. This is another awesome question. And thank you, Catherine, for having, I assume, your daughter help you out tonight. This is awesome. This is another really great question. As a person of color myself, a woman of color, this really hits home for me. There are so many companies that I've worked for that say they value, culture and diversity, but have a staff that does not look like it at all. I've been that token person. Actually, at OSPI, I've been the token Latino on a task force, and it's quite insulting. I think in order to be able to do a better job of hiring at OSPI, for teachers, for people in this administration, we need to have that cultural competency. We need to know what it is that we're looking for in people, and it's not just checking a box to make sure that we've got one of these people and one of those, but it's actually bringing people from different backgrounds and experiences like those that we have to the table. These are the voices that are most important. So I think that lens is going to serve me well in this role.
Thank you, Ms. Espinoza. And Superintendent Richtel.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's an awesome question, River, and thank you for asking this. Our state has been diversifying our teacher force at a much faster pace over the last 4 or 5 years, but obviously we have a long ways to go. Our teachers who are in the profession for less than 5 years, about 1 out of every 6 is a teacher of color, and that doesn't reflect our students. So we've got a group in our state called the Professional Educator Standards Board. Our partnership with them is really focusing on career ladders, taking a lot of people in the community who may be interested in teaching and giving them the opportunity through alternative certifications. A lot of our para-educators are much more diverse in language, race, and ethnicity, and giving them that ability to really career into teaching. We've got more of our community colleges, not just our universities, who are opening up teacher prep programs so people can stay in their community and become educators. So there's multiple things already in place to do this, but it also has to be a place where kids feel like that's where they want to come back to. And they won't want to teach in it if they don't feel comfortable being in it today. And that does mean lots of professional development for the existing staff to really understand culturally responsive practices, to really embrace the diversity of our students. So lots of things in place right now that are building momentum.
Thank you. All right, our next question comes from...
I'm sorry, can I interrupt for just one moment? Lulu, can you speak a little louder when you interpret? Maria is having a little trouble understanding.
All right, thank you. Okay, so our next question comes from Roel. Go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Roel Redondo. I am 11 years old. I am in 6th grade and I attend North Shore Christian Academy. My question is, due to COVID-19, a lot of parents have lost their jobs and are not getting any type of assistance. For example, some families have lost their homes, can't pay their bills, don't have internet access, etc. How would you support these families in need so that their kids have all they need to be successful and to learn and be successful in school?
Thank you, Roel. All right, Superintendent Richtel, that question goes to you first.
Thank you, thank you. 6th grade, by the way, was my absolute favorite year. Mrs. Sharon Cruz was my teacher, and she's the one who actually inspired me to become a teacher. So I'm very happy about where you are. This is a very powerful question, and we've got this national crisis right now, a complete lack of federal leadership on testing so that we can really do an assessment of COVID so we can open our buildings faster. But our direction to districts is that the safest opening is obviously the best, and we are really trying to get districts to open in a way that's safe and sustainable. This will help, obviously, our students. It'll help families to go back to work. But in the meantime, we have distributed 300,000 devices statewide and 60,000 connections. And we've made it clear to school districts that if that still isn't going to support family, it isn't going to create the learning opportunity, you need to make your buildings available to students. And we see in the reopening plans of our districts that they are, in fact, making sure that students with disabilities whose individual education program can't be well done at a distance, they can come in. Students with language access barriers can come in, and we're seeing more and more of that statewide. So it's about creating many solutions for families and supporting them. Obviously, we need more federal help. The $600 a week benefit that families needed ran out, and Congress does not have a solution for that yet. So we need some help from our federal partners as well.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Espinoza.
Thank you. Thank you, Roel, for your question. I love your name, by the way. I assume that because you go to a Christian school, private school, you probably get to go back to school face to face, or are you online?
I'm doing both.
You're doing a combination. So you
Yes.
probably have some friends that are online only, don't get to go to school. And it sounds like from the question that you shared with us, you're asking what would we do to support those other kids and parents that need that extra help right now, may have lost their job. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. So point I'm trying to make is kids are in different positions, you know, depending on the position that their parents are in, of course. And this is, I think, a little bit unfair given that, you know, the coronavirus is affecting everyone. And as you mentioned, people have lost their jobs, particularly working families where both parents have to work, or if it's just the mom, are struggling the most. And this is why I've asked for $2,500, $2,500 per student for your parents to be able to support, whether you're going to a private school, public school, you need internet access or help buying a new computer. I've asked for this small amount of money from our education budget for our kids in public education. So that would be my answer. Thank you again for your question, Roel.
All right, thank you. All right, our next question comes from Maya Janae. Go ahead and ask your question.
The videos. Hi, my name is Maya Janae. I'm 10 years old and I'm in. Sorry. Sorry. I'm 10 years old. I'm in the 5th grade. If you were elected, I want to know your policy on the school computers having the camera on. I have a few questions. Why do we need to have our camera on? Some people live in shelters and other people are homeless. And some people don't like to have a camera in their home. And are we being culturally responsive? Because for some people, their home is their safe place. And everybody home doesn't look the same and it could cause bullying. And why can't we have the virtual backgrounds on? Why can't you just see me? Why do you have to see my whole household? And why are they recording, screen recording? Why are they screen recording? Because I just saw my teacher sharing her screen and it said screen recording on. I want to know, why are they screen recording? She didn't ask for our permission and we don't know where it goes. It could be scary, nervous for some people, nervous for some people.
All right.
For their time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Maya Janae. All right, that question will be first goes to you, Ms. Espinoza.
Well, thank you, Maya Janae. As another Maya, this question is very important to me. But in all seriousness, your question is sincere, and I appreciate you again having the courage to ask it. I don't think that we should be requiring that the cameras are on. It is a sensitive, private place, and your home is your safe place, no matter who you are. I mean, we should hope so. So I absolutely sympathize with you. I don't agree with the screen recording either, especially if we are at the same time recording children's homes and what's going on inside them. I agree with what you said about bullying. You know, the inside of your home may look different than the inside of your friend's home. And this is, you know, really a sensitive, safe place for us. So I completely sympathize with your question. I would change it, current policy, if possible. Now, because it's local control, that may be difficult, but I'm with you. We got to do something to fix it.
All right, thank you. Superintendent Rickdahl.
Thank you, Maya Janae. I grew up in a house that was built around 1900, and I remember it so distinctly because I had one entire wall of my bedroom that had no sheetrock on it. You could see right back to the wood. The installation was actually newspaper that was used at the time, and I was terribly embarrassed about where I lived. So This is a really powerful question for me. Like Maya Espinoza, I agree with her. We agree on this. I don't think there's a requirement. There's no state requirement to record anything and no state requirement that cameras be on. Local districts are making this decision. Local teachers in many ways trying to figure out whether students are engaging in the learning. But we've advised them that it's really about student outcomes. It's about making sure that students can demonstrate their learning, and it isn't about how many assignments you turn in or how much time you're sitting on the screen. So we will continue to advise them that that is not a requirement. I really want to encourage you and your mom, I think that was your mom there with you, really check in with the school to say, this recording thing makes me uncomfortable, and I want to know if you've gotten permission from folks to do this, because that's really important that they do that and understand where that data goes. We do have data privacy laws so that can't be shared, but you should still know whether or not the school district is just keeping that for lesson plans and it's immediately getting rid of it, or whether they're archiving that in any way. So I encourage you to talk to your local building principal for sure, if not the school district. This is one where we really agree.
Thank you. All right, and I just want to say thank you to our children leaders for asking those great questions. And now we are going to turn to our parent leaders who will be asking some questions, starting off with Jason. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Jason Hophoff, and I'm a parent leader from Everett, Washington. My question is, in light of the pandemic and racial tensions in America, how do you respond to both of these events in regard to social, emotional well-being of students, and more specifically, its effect on our students of color and their families? And how would you communicate any guidance given to both districts and families?
Thank you, Jason. Superintendent McDowell, your turn to answer first.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. It's such a powerful question. In our reopening guidance that we sent to districts in June, I think what was really clear from a lot of folks we pulled together was, first and foremost, we wanted to make sure that we were really aware of and attuned to students and staff mental health. And so we guided districts to spend their energy in the beginning of the school year really focusing on that, connecting with students, spend the proper time to really build community in that classroom, even if it's remote. Recognize that there's sort of multiple traumas here, the fact that we are distant, the fact that there is a struggle to connect for some kids, and it's happening in the middle of this remarkable national movement and moment around racial tension, which we've seen in this country before, but we've never seen it at a time where it's on every single student's smartphone. It's giving them real-time feeds. They're seeing images that they've never seen before. So I think this is so powerful, and that's why we tried to guide to this. Every district has a requirement to do social emotional screening for students and really build a plan, spend the right amount of time. If they do that well on the front end, then the content will be great. The math and the science and all that will come along later, but you really got to focus on this in the beginning. So we've guided this as a requirement of districts for reopening, whether they're remote, hybrid, or in person.
Thank you. And Ms. Espinoza?
Yes, thank you so much for your question, Jason. This for me is another reason why we have got to help districts be able to provide some type of in-person learning. Yes, the pandemic has affected school closures, but we need to make sure that we open these safe spaces to be able to allow for exactly what you're talking about. Since schools closed last spring, we know that there are huge portions of students that have gone missing. They haven't logged on at all. And for a lot of these same students, schools were the safe space where we were able to check in with them and do these social and emotional checkups. But that's not happening right now. And it's unfortunate that the pandemic continues to have this snowball effect. I really think that we need to prioritize getting our schools reopened. And yes, you know, school districts are able to do that, but I think it really takes leadership from the top to be help that actually come to fruition. It takes support, ease. It takes support from the local teachers union, working with the school board. We can do it, but it does take leadership. So thank you again for your question, Jason.
Thank you. All right, our next question comes from Catherine. Go ahead, Catherine. Catherine, you're on mute.
I apologize. So OSPI Student Learning and Grading Guidance 2020 states students will move on to the next grade. However, it is not true. For example, my son is in 8th grade in the Seattle Public School District with an advanced learning program in math. currently he is repeating 8th grade math due to not being able to take algebra in his school and the lack of evidence that he learned during spring closure. How do you feel about this? How can you prevent this from happening in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Espinoza, your turn to answer first.
Yeah, well, let's certainly hope there's no crazy circumstances like this one that caused, this huge disruption. That said, I certainly understand what's going on with your son, I think it was that you said, Catherine. So I want to make sure that we are providing that individual support to be able to look at students that are going through similar situations. Actually, I'll bring it back to the school choice issue. Supposedly, we have school choice in public schools where you can transfer to the school that you like within your district, supposedly. But I'm sure many of you, like me, have experienced that's not always the case. Despite what the guidance says, despite what the rules are, that doesn't always happen. So I hope to have a very open and inclusive office to be able to handle individual cases like your son's, Catherine. And I'm proud of him. It sounds like he's a real smart student. So let's not let this stifle his potential for this year. Thanks for your question.
Thank you. Superintendent Rectal.
Yeah, thank you. As the governor closed down schools last spring, it was really obvious for folks across the state that we had about 30 weeks of learning under our belt with students and kind of knew where they were, but we were losing those last 12 weeks and the whole country experienced that. So one of the things districts asked us is, are we just en masse moving kids forward? Can we evaluate that individually? Are we holding them back? So the guidance last spring was to have evaluation of student learning be a lot more flexible, really recognize that moment, but use the totality of what you know about a student to make a determination. We did not want districts holding kids back in large groups. So that's that guidance. Coming into the fall, we're really back to the way districts have been traditionally grading and evaluating student learning. They can advance students faster based on competency. They can work with the family to say, hey, let's slow this thing down a little bit. So if you're having a challenge speeding up your student or getting them additional supports and you don't feel comfortable that they're moving forward, that is now back to our local school districts to work with parents individually about that choice. In the spring, it was a real statewide policy to make sure we were advancing students, but now this is back to local control and local family choice with that individual school working it out.
Thank you. All right, our next question comes from Miriam. Go ahead, Miriam.
Okay. Hi, my name is Miriam Mares. I'm the mom of a 6-year-old boy with different abilities and a pioneer. What are your hopes and visions for K-12 public education in Washington State? And what should classrooms of the future look like in order to get teaching and learning efforts progressive, meaningful, and strong for students, with special needs, ELL, and highly capable?
Thank you. All right, the question first goes to you, Superintendent Richtel.
Thank you. I think the beauty and the power of public education is that it's accessible and that it is a civil right, a positive civil right that all of our students have access to learning. That wasn't always the case. Privatized systems that we saw for many, many years on the East Coast, they really denied learning for students. And civil rights laws in the 60s and certainly for students with disabilities in the 70s. And then more recently, really affirmative rights for families whose students are accelerating faster. The system is trying to customize its learning around families, but my vision is that every student and every parent knows the options that are before them, that they can speed up their students' progress where they see success and achievement. They can kind of back it down if they need to, but that the system is wrapping around a kid individually and what a family wants, not forcing the student into what the system designs. There's a long ways to go on this because while we've committed to a lot of customized programs, and a lot of movement of students and a lot of ability in a high cap or supporting students with special needs, it's not universally that way yet. That's why I'm trying to tear down that junior and senior year, for example, and really open it up and let those students figure out what their pathways are. We're thinking increasingly about how we kind of transform our middle school system. So it's not 6 periods or 7 periods a day, kid on a backpack jumping every 45 minutes, but how do you really block that together? How do you customize a schedule around that? Or at least have buildings in your district where students can choice into those, as we see in many places around the state. So the ultimate vision is wrapping the system around individualized learning plans for every single kid.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Espinosa.
Yes, thank you, Miriam, for your question. I'm sure you're a fantastic mother to your son, so I appreciate you having this question for him. I think it's unacceptable that our state ranks so low in providing special education. We consistently are in the bottom 10 of all states, and only half of our students actually end up graduating. I think this is terrible, and especially given the new money, we've recently more than doubled education funding. Still, special education gets a short end of the stick. They never are fully funded, and these options are always very limited to them. I believe that every student should have options, whether that means, again, attending different classes or attending different schools. I think you know what's best for your son, and I'd like to be able to empower you to be able to give that to him. So funding first and foremost, choice as well. And then I've talked about this actually at one of my other forums, but I'd like to create an office of accessibility at the superintendent's office, and I look forward to working with special needs parents to be able to put that together.
All right, thank you very much. All right, our next question comes from Maria.
Hola, mi nombre es María Dolopi. Mi pregunta es la siguiente. ¿Qué piensa usted acerca de que la educación a edad temprana sea parte de la educación básica?
All right. So the question that she asked are, what are your thoughts about making early learning part of basic education? And the question goes to you first, Ms. Espinosa.
Sí, gracias, María. Pienso que es una buena idea, pero it is something that the legislature must help us with. And I think sí es posible, pero necesitamos, like ideas de padres como tú. So I think we need ideas from parents to be able to make this happen. If it weren't for you sharing your idea, we wouldn't know that this is important to you. So while this is not in OSPI's current purview, it does feed into it, and so we can be doing things to be able to support early learning, but I think that it should be part of it. As you said, I think that all early learning, K-12 and higher education are part of a public education system in our state. So I would support exploring something like that, and I would work with the legislature to do it, and I hope you'd help us be able to do it. Gracias otra vez, María.
Thank you. And Superintendent Richtel.
Yeah, unequivocally, yes. I believe that universal access to early learning preschool should be a part of basic education. Every 3- and 4-year-old, if the parent chooses, should have access to universal learning. This is something we've been building, but we've been doing it through, kind of programmatic approaches like Head Start and ECAP, which many of you are familiar with and in some ways are sponsors of this event. I'd like to see this really be accessible to everybody. What we know about the way kids learn, of course, is that in early years, the brain is mapping itself and it's creating connections that we never get a chance to do better later on. So I have been building out not only 3- and 4-year-old programs in partnership with other agencies and putting them in more parts of the state, including right in our school districts, but also building out dual language. The other thing we know is if we universally give kids access to learning multiple languages as early as possible, they are much more likely to have those languages become a part of their everyday lives. They're much more likely to master them. And they actually perform better later on in subjects like math and science because it's the way the brain is mapped. So everything we know from the research is that 3- and 4-year-olds, if the family wants, should have access to universal early learning. It will pay dividends in the long run, and I believe we will excel well beyond the rest of the country if we become the first state to make this universal.
All right, thank you very much. All right, our next question comes from Jason again.
Okay, how would you amend the graduation pathway since the 10th grade SBA wasn't offered to the class of 2022 and possibly not the class of 2023?
All right, thank you, Jason. Superintendent Richtel, that question goes to you first.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. One of the bills that I worked on and pushed forward out of my agency a couple of years ago, it eventually became House Bill 1599. If you want to look that up, I think you probably have, Jason. You're very sophisticated about this question. Is that we really want to get away from these high stakes tests being the determining factor of students' graduation. So it's just one thing now out of many ways that students can demonstrate. So we need evaluation to know if our system's performing. We definitely want to support student learning by understanding how they're doing, but the high stakes testing regime forced upon the states by the federal government, both political parties in the federal government have been doing this for many years. We kind of broke that a couple years ago and said, no, we're going to let that assessment be one way a kid can demonstrate proficiency, but we're also going to give them lots of other options, including SATs and ACTs, obviously retakes, CTE course sequences, other dual credit programs like Running Start, college and high school. We've got 7 or 8 different ways now for students to demonstrate proficiency. So I don't know that we'll be testing this spring. The feds at this point are going to require us to, but that might be rethought later on. Either way, we're a state poised to give students lots of ways to demonstrate their knowledge.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Espinoza.
Well, thanks again, Jason. And you can imagine that I would say, yes, choice is great. Let's give our kids options to be able to do this. It sounds though, and you know, feel free to correct me, but it sounds like this may be a missed opportunity that you're viewing it as. And so in that case, I want to make sure that we do provide the environment for which kids can take these standardized tests. If that's the way that they've been heading. You know, I know a lot of kids study, prepare and plan for these tests, which are very important. And so I have actually heard from a number of students that say, hey, this is not fair. I was looking forward to taking this. Or how is it that, you know, students before me were required to take this and now they don't have to? So I think that the choices are a good solution. I do think that, you know, this standardized testing is also an important metric, but should not be the only factor and not the only way that we measure success or provide students with future options.
All right, thank you very much. Our next question comes from Catherine again.
Hi, I just want to let you know that these are not my questions, but this question is very dear to me because I am actually a survivor of domestic violence, as are my 3 older kids. I am a survivor of domestic violence. So is my son. At the age of 17, my son had been charged twice for domestic violence misdemeanors, one for assaulting me and one for coercion against his girlfriend. Referendum 90 specifies that the comprehensive sex education curriculum include information that helps students choose healthy behaviors and relationships free from violence, coercion, and intimidation. What impact do you believe R90 will have on preventing domestic violence in our state? If you don't support R90, how do you intend to address domestic violence prevention among student populations?
All right, thank you. And the question goes to you first, Ms. Espinoza.
Well, thank you again, Catherine. And you are quite the overachiever with the questions from other people, managing the timer, one from your daughter. I really appreciate this question, and I appreciate you sharing why it's personal for you. I do not support, well, so R90 is the referendum to repeal the mandatory sex ed bill, which does state, as you mentioned, that it's supposed to help you know, be able to build healthy relationships for kids. I've looked at the curriculum material that is approved under the state law, and I don't think there's enough emphasis on the healthy relationships piece of it. This is so important, particularly in a lens of cultural competency. We do need to be teaching more of this, and actually, this is part of my platform. This is something I consider an essential life skill. I don't necessarily think it needs to be tied to sex ed. This is something we've got to teach kids and families all the time. And so it's something that I think we need to incorporate beyond whether its affiliation with R90.
All right, thank you. Superintendent Rectal.
Thank you. I do support Referendum 90. That is supporting Senate Bill 5395 and maintaining the law as passed by the legislature. They thought a lot about this, and part of what they thought about was the skills that you build as a young person to avoid those risky behaviors and to help young people understand that they may be on a path to being aggressors. And so it's too late if you just start trying to do this in high school, but you've got to have it age appropriate and medically accurate and scientifically based. So the early part of that bill has nothing to do with sexual health education per se. Kindergarten through third grade is something called Aaron's Law, where you're teaching kids to manage emotions and keep their hands to themselves, and really sort of thinking about restorative work when there is tension between two young people. It's making sure they understand they have a safe adult to talk to. You start building those skills early and that awareness early, and then you talk about puberty and how the body changes, which is happening earlier and earlier for Americans. And then by middle and high school, you are talking about avoidance of risky behaviors, of sexual assaults, of sexually transmitted infections. So it builds on each other. That's why 29 other states have a requirement similar to this, because it does show in the research that it can reduce violence and reduce the victimization that folks face in our society. But you got to support the start, and that means really being intentional about the work. It's age appropriate early on.
Thank you. All right, our next question comes from Miriam again.
Thank you. How will you ensure education, equity in education for all the students in the state of Washington?
Thank you. Okay, Superintendent Rectal, that question goes to you first.
I think I missed the part in the middle. Ensure adult education, was that how it was?
The question was, how will you ensure education equity and education for all of the students in the state of Washington?
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, the first thing you do is make a positive civil rights commitment to students, and that means ensuring that they have access to the best education system possible. We see other states in the country that attempt systems that are only saying that by words and not actually by putting the supports in the community. And so one of the things that I've been passionate about my whole life, being a kid who grew up on financial assistance, is it's not enough just to teach some awesome content like math or science, but you've got to have whole community supports. So the best way to ensure equity is to make sure that you're seeing communities through the lens of equity. Do they have access to great schools, but also do they have access to community-based supports and nutritional programs and mental health supports? This idea of bringing what we call communities in schools, where the school might be the single touch point, but you're actually bringing in those supports, that is the life difference for some of our students. And so it is about rigorous classes and making sure that they have lots of options and that they can explore all kinds of subjects, but you got to bring those supports in with it. I've got a budget proposal to the legislature for the first time in our state's history that would ask them to really beef up the investments in nursing, mental health supports, counselors, social workers, as well as parent outreach coordinators. So we've got to make this a part of basic education in a way we never have. That is the best chance we have of making sure that our young people are successful and everybody has a chance at really equitable learning.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Espinosa.
Yes, gracias otra vez, Miriam, por tu pregunta. You know, this is exactly the question that Superintendent Reichtel and I could not disagree more. While he thinks that putting more money into the existing education system will someday turn out to be different, I completely disagree. I think that the number one way that we can provide parents with equity for their children is to provide school choice. Like so many of you, I'm sure, we do not have a choice in where our kids go to school. We are confined by where we live. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that rich parents who can afford to send their kids to a good school or afford to live in the neighborhood with a good public school, I don't think that's fair. 70% of parents can choose where their kids go to school, but for us in the 30%, I attended public school my whole life. This is not the option for us, and I don't think it's fair. I think that we do need to provide something to parents so that they can choose where to send their kids to school. Options equal equity.
All right, thank you very much. All right, our next question comes from Maria again. Go ahead, Maria.
Ok. Mi pregunta es, ¿Cuál es su plan de trabajo para dirigir esfuerzos en reformar el que se mejoren los programas de preparación para la educación de los maestros? Así cada maestro postulante estará preparado para enseñar a cada niño en el estado de Washington, incluyendo a aquellos niños con discapacidad.
All right. The question is, what is your plan to lead reform efforts to improve teacher education preparation programs so each teacher candidate is prepared to teach every child in Washington, including those with disabilities? And this question goes to you first, Ms. Espinoza.
Yeah, well, you know, I think that is a very important question, and it's a tough one. Teachers' jobs are hard enough as they are, and we know that they don't get to pick their students. They've got to work with the students in the cohort, let's call it. So as part of my idea for reimagining education, this strict age-based grade system that we have for school, I think does need to be looked at. And I am talking with teachers and different school professionals to look at ways to be able to do something different. I don't think it's fair to every student in the class or the teacher to have students from all different needs and different readiness factors to be in the same classroom. I don't know that that's the best way to do it. We know it causes challenges for the teachers, and we know that smaller class sizes aims to help that sometimes. Certainly teachers are very gifted and talented and have been doing a good job at this, but I think in order to support them better, we should be able to let them tell us how it would be easier for them to be able to teach every student so that students with those special needs get the special attention that they need as well, while not separating them from their cohort of classmates as well. So I think we need to get creative with this, and I think we ask a lot of teachers to do more than they're already expected to do.
Thank you. Superintendent Rectal.
Thank you. We have a plan for this, and we've been carrying it out. The superintendent doesn't get to control higher education institutions and teacher prep programs, but we get some influence on what we expect teachers to know and be able to do. And then the Professional Educator Standards Board, which my office has a representation to, does get to work with those higher ed institutions. We've called on a couple things here. Number one, we want every teacher in those programs to go through training that is really focused on the least restrictive environment for students, inclusionary practices, because the research is really clear. Students with disabilities perform significantly better and have better outcomes the more they are with their age-appropriate peers in a general education setting. And it turns out that the students who are in that gen ed setting who don't have an IEP, they perform better as well because they're learning how to partner with their colleagues. They are seeing how complex the world is. They are hearing things differently the way it is taught. Universal design for learning is the whole idea of delivering instruction in multiple ways so that different learners get it different ways. That's helping every kid in the classroom. For the first time in our state's history, we put $30 million into training our existing teachers. I think we've trained up to 40,000 of them now on these inclusionary practices, but it's really clear that you've hit the nail on the head here. All educators, not just teachers who are certified in special education, all teachers need training on how to be more successful with inclusionary practices so that those students with disabilities get the maximum time possible in that gen ed classroom. The last thing I'll say is for the first time in our state's history, there's a little financial incentive for districts. The more they have inclusionary practices, they get a little financial benefit from that.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so these are some audience questions, and we'll try to get to a couple since we are getting close to the end of our time. This is a follow-up question from one of the answers earlier regarding teachers of color and trying to recruit more of them. They said, I want the best qualified, not because of their color. So people who are minorities will get special treatment to be teachers. How do you respond to that question? And that question goes to you first, Superintendent Richter.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, what we're talking about is strengthening the education system so that our students are learning from diverse teachers, because that's the experience our students will have in the workforce. It is not normal that only 1 in 11 or 1 in 10 teachers who are veteran teachers are educators of color if our students are going to experience something different. So We think it's pretty clear that the more diverse our educators are, the better the experience for all students, not just students of color. It's not per se special treatment. It's about being intentional about trying to recruit young people and career professionals in other fields to come into the teaching profession who bring a different perspective, race, ethnicity, just a different life experience, hopefully multiple languages as well, because again, all of our students benefit from being multilingual. So it really is an intentional practice of trying to recruit more people to the profession. I want the best and most talented people in that classroom. And I'd say a system that discriminates against anybody does not get the best talent. So we want to really open it up to anyone who might be interested in this profession and support them.
All right, thank you. Ms. Espinoza.
Yeah, I've actually done work to that extent. When we say, that we want to recruit more teachers of color, for me, the reason is so that these teachers can reflect the students that they're teaching. Our students are much more diverse than the teacher workforce, and students identify with their teachers. They look up to them. They, see themselves one day as a teacher or as an adult. And so I think it is important that our teachers reflect their student population, because I think they are then better to connect with their students. And this is proven. This is not just anecdotal. That is why in working in Olympia with the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, I championed a bill which incentivized bilingual students. Like I'm sure Miriam and Maria, you have bilingual kids. Your kids help the teacher speak English and Spanish. Well, I wanted to help incentivize your sons and daughters to become teachers in their community. And if they came back and taught in their community for 5 years, their student loans would be forgiven. So these are some of the ways that I've seen that we could incentivize great kids to become good teachers in their communities. I think it's important not to check a box again, but so that we have great teachers teaching kids and they feel that connection and hopefully have better student outcomes because of it.
All right, thank you. Since we are running out of time, I'm going to ask you one final question. My question to both of you is, why do you believe you are the best person for this job? And I'm starting with you, Ms. Espinoza.
Yes, I really unequivocally believe that I'm the best person for this job because I represent the needs of parents and students. I am not beholden to any special interest group that wants to pull our education system in one direction or another. I'm not doing a balancing act of making sure that everyone that donated to my campaign has a say in my administration. I am almost exclusively funded by individuals, parents like you, who've given me $5, $25 to be able to see us support. And if you can believe it, we've almost raised as much money as the superintendent that's been there for 3 years, 3.5 years now. The majority of his money comes from special interest groups. And this makes me very nervous as a parent. We can say we've done, little incremental things here and there, but I think that I am the best candidate for this position because I think it's time that we put parents and students in charge of education in our state. And that's what I'm looking forward to do. So I hope to ask for your support tonight. Please go to my website, maiaforus.com, MAIA for us.com, and there's even a page to share your ideas. I hope you'll join our team. Please reach out anytime, and thank you for your time tonight.
All right, thank you. Superintendent Richtel.
Thank you so much. This is a job about experience. You've got to be a strong executive with a background in education and public education in particular. I'm the candidate who's been a public school teacher, a school board member. I grew up in this state as a public school student, attended public university in this state, Washington State University. I've touched the system in many different ways to understand how different perspectives exist. I've raised my kids through public education. I'm a parent of 2, so I see it as the lens of a father as well. So what I've tried to do for the last 4 years is build partnerships. It's how we've got record high graduation rates, and graduation rates growing fastest for students of color compared to the overall average. It's how we brought bilingual education programs to 40 school districts. It's why we now have more students graduating with certificates and industry credentials, not just the one size fits all, every student must go to a university. That all came with partnerships, the business community, the labor community, parents, school board members, educators, our students directly feeding that system in terms of their ideas and their creativity. So this is a job about experience, and I have that. It's a job about partnerships, which I've demonstrated. And it's very much a job over the next couple of years about being a strong financial executive, because we are going to face fiscal challenges with COVID. And my graduate degree is in public administration with a focus on finance and performance management, getting better results with your tax dollars as we move forward. And we're doing that right now. Really want to thank you all for having us. Thank you, Maya, for the forum with you again, and hope everyone stays very healthy and safe. Please, please, please wear your face coverings. It makes a huge difference in getting our cases down, keeping our community safe, and it's allowing us to open up schools more and more.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Richtel and Ms. Espinoza, as well as our children and parent leaders and audience for your questions throughout this past hour. If you would like to contact either one of the candidates for further questions, please feel free to reach them at the emails that we have dropped into the chat. If you haven't registered to vote or need to check to see if you're registered, we have also put a link in the chat to do so. I would also like to remind everyone that ballots will be mailed out beginning October 16th. Ballots must be postmarked or dropped in any of the ballot boxes located throughout the state by November 3rd. Lastly, please remember to vote. I want to thank everybody and have a good evening.
Thank you, Lizzie. Y muchísimas gracias a tú, Lulu. Gracias por su ayuda. Bye. Adiós.